Captain John Blake stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching Earth grow smaller through the massive viewport. The ship had just launched from the orbital shipyard, and Blake could still hear the mocking laughter of the alien diplomats who attended the ceremony. The tall blue Zentari ambassador had called his ship crude. The insect-like hive representative said it looked like something a child would build with scrap metal. Even the peaceful Corvani delegates shook their heads at what they saw as another failed human attempt at real spaceship design. Blake did not care what they thought. He had spent 5 years working with Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez and Dr. Amy Sullivan to build something different. While other human ships copied alien technology and tried to fit into galactic standards, the Defiance was built using pure human engineering. Every system on the ship came from human minds working in ways the galaxy had never seen before. Commander Lisa Parker walked up beside him holding a data pad. She was his second in command and the smartest person he knew. Lisa had graduated top of her class from the Earth Naval Academy and could outthink most alien tactical computers. She looked at the readout and smiled. "All systems are running perfectly, Captain. Danny says the engines are performing better than expected. Dr. Sullivan reports that the weapon systems are online and ready for testing. We are cleared for our first patrol mission in the Outer Rim sectors." Blake nodded and turned to face his crew. The bridge was smaller than most alien warships, but every station was designed for maximum efficiency. Human hands had built every control panel and human minds had programmed every computer system. The crew moved with practiced ease, even though this was their first real mission together. "Take us to the jump coordinates, Lisa. Let us see what this ship can really do." The Defiance moved through space differently than other ships. Where alien vessels followed straight paths and predictable courses, the human ship seemed to dance between the stars. Its engines did not just push it forward, but allowed it to twist and turn in ways that should have been impossible. The aliens, watching from their own ships, found the movement patterns confusing and inefficient. 3 days into their patrol, the crew received a distress signal from a civilian convoy under attack by pirates. The convoy consisted of 5 cargo ships carrying medical supplies to a colony world. 12 pirate vessels had surrounded them and were demanding surrender. The convoy captain begged for help, knowing that no one would come in time. Blake looked at his tactical display and saw something that made him smile. The pirates were using standard attack formations that any alien military academy would teach. They had positioned their ships in a perfect sphere around the convoy, expecting any rescue force to approach in a straight line. It was textbook strategy that had worked for thousands of years across the galaxy. The Defiance arrived at the battle zone faster than anyone expected. Blake had ordered maximum speed, and the ship had responded by bending space around itself in ways that alien physics said were impossible. The pirates detected the approaching ship, but their computers could not calculate its exact position or speed. Lisa studied the enemy formation and started laughing. "Captain, these pirates are following the Galactic Standard Combat Manual word for word. They have no idea what they are about to face." Blake gave the order to attack, and the Defiance came alive. The weapon systems that Dr. Sullivan had designed did not fire in straight lines like alien guns. Instead, they curved and twisted through space, coming at targets from angles that should not have existed. The first pirate ship exploded before its captain even realized he was under attack. The remaining pirates tried to respond using their training, but nothing worked. When they fired at where the Defiance should be, the ship was somewhere else. When they tried to surround it, the human vessel seemed to be in 3 places at once. Their targeting computers kept giving error messages because they could not understand how the enemy ship was moving. Danny Rodriguez pushed the engines beyond their rated limits, and the ship responded by moving even faster. The Defiance spun around the pirate formation like a dancer, its weapons striking with perfect accuracy while avoiding every shot fired at it. The battle that should have taken hours was over in minutes. When the smoke cleared, 11 pirate ships were destroyed, and one was limping away with its engines barely working. The convoy was safe and their crews were cheering over the radio. But the most important witnesses were the alien observers who had been watching from nearby space stations. Word spread quickly through galactic communication networks about the strange human ship that fought like nothing anyone had ever seen. Military analysts tried to study the battle recordings, but their computers could not explain what had happened. The Defiance had broken every known rule of space combat and won, a victory that should have been impossible. As the ship continued its patrol, Captain Blake knew that everything had changed. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in a way that no one could ignore. The other species would have to take humans seriously now, whether they wanted to or not. The Defiance was just the beginning of something much bigger. Dr. Sullivan approached the captain with a concerned expression on her face. "John, we are getting reports that several alien governments are demanding explanations about our technology. They want to know how we built a ship that can do what we just did." Blake looked out at the stars and smiled. "Let them ask their questions, Amy. They will learn soon enough that humans do not think like everyone else in this galaxy. We build things differently because we are different. The Defiance is proof that our way works just as well as theirs, may be better." The news of the Defiance victory reached the criminal underworld faster than official channels. In a dark space station orbiting a dead star, Zexthul studied the battle recordings with growing anger. The reptilian pirate lord had ruled the Outer Rim for 20 years, and no one had ever defeated his crews so easily. His yellow eyes glowed as he watched the human ship destroy his best fighters like they were children playing with toys. Zexthul called his lieutenants to a meeting in his private chambers. The room was filled with stolen treasures from 100 worlds and the skulls of enemies who had challenged his authority. His crew consisted of the most dangerous criminals from dozens of species, all united under his brutal leadership. "This human ship must be destroyed. They have made us look weak in front of the entire galaxy. Every petty thief and smuggler will think they can challenge us now. We cannot allow this insult to go unanswered." His second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Vex, studied the tactical data. "Boss, this ship fights like nothing we have seen before. Our standard tactics will not work against it. Maybe we should avoid them and focus on easier targets." Zexthul roared in fury, and his claws extended from his massive hands. "Are you suggesting we run from a single human ship? I did not build this empire by avoiding fights. Send word to all our fleets. I want every available ship hunting this Defiance. Whoever brings me its captain alive will receive a fortune in credits." Meanwhile on Earth, Admiral Kate Morrison sat in her office reviewing reports from across human space. She had secretly overseen the Defiance project from its beginning and knew exactly what the ship represented. The technology came from Dr. Peter Collins, a physicist who had spent his entire career studying how human creativity could be turned into practical applications. The Admiral opened a secure communication channel to the Defiance. Captain Blake appeared on the screen, looking tired but satisfied. The battle with the pirates had been their first real test, and the ship had performed beyond all expectations. "John, I am getting pressure from the Galactic Council about your recent engagement. They want detailed technical specifications of the Defiance and permission to inspect the ship. Several alien governments are claiming that we have developed illegal weapons." Blake shook his head firmly. "Kate, you know we cannot allow that. If they see how our systems really work, they will either steal the technology or find ways to counter it. The Defiance is effective because they do not understand how we think." The Admiral agreed, but she also understood the political situation. Earth was still a minor member of the galactic community, and they could not afford to make too many enemies. The humans needed time to build more ships like the Defiance before revealing their full capabilities. Dr. Collins joined the conversation from his laboratory on Mars. He looked excited as he always did when discussing his work. The Defiance represents a completely new approach to space combat. Where alien races follow rigid doctrines developed over thousands of years, we improvise and adapt. Our AI systems learn and evolve in real time, something their computers are programmed never to do. The secret was in how humans approached problems differently than other species. Aliens had reached technological peaks millennia ago and stopped innovating. They built ships according to ancient patterns and fought battles using strategies that never changed. Humans kept pushing boundaries and finding new solutions to old problems. 3 weeks after the pirate battle, the Defiance was patrolling near a binary star system when their sensors detected a massive energy signature. Zexthul had found them with a fleet of 30 heavily armed vessels. The pirate ship surrounded the human vessel in a perfect formation designed to prevent any possibility of escape. Commander Lisa Parker studied the tactical display and felt her heart racing. "Captain, we are heavily outnumbered. Standard doctrine would suggest retreating to friendly space and calling for reinforcements." Blake looked at the enemy formation and started to smile. "Lisa, since when do we follow standard doctrine? Danny, give me everything the engines can handle. Amy, prepare all weapon systems for combat. Let us show these pirates what happens when they hunt humans." The Defiance moved toward the enemy fleet in a way that violated every principle of space warfare. Instead of trying to escape or fighting defensively, the human ship attacked directly into the center of the pirate formation. Zexthul watched from his command ship as his carefully planned trap seemed to fall apart. The human vessel twisted through space like a living thing, its weapons firing in patterns that made no sense to alien military minds. Where the pirates expected straight-line attacks, they faced curved shots that came from impossible angles. Their formations scattered as ships tried to avoid weapons fire that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez pushed the Defiance beyond its design limits, and the ship responded by performing maneuvers that should have torn it apart. The human engineering philosophy was different from alien approaches. Where other species built ships to precise specifications, humans built them to adapt and exceed expectations. Dr. Amy Sullivan coordinated the weapon systems using targeting algorithms that incorporated chaos theory and quantum uncertainty. The alien ships could not predict where the next attack would come from because the humans themselves did not know until the moment they fired. The battle raged for 2 hours as the Defiance danced through the enemy fleet, like a predator among prey. One by one, the pirate ships were destroyed or disabled until only Zexthul remained. The reptilian commander found himself alone, facing a human ship that showed no signs of damage despite being outnumbered 30-1. Blake opened a communication channel to the pirate flagship. "Zexthul, I suggest you retreat while you still can. This is your only warning." The alien criminal screamed in fury, but he was not stupid. He had seen what the human ship could do and knew that continued fighting meant certain death. His remaining vessel jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Military analysts from every major government studied the recordings, but none could explain how a single ship had defeated such overwhelming odds. The Defiance had proven that human technology was not just different, but potentially superior to anything the galaxy had seen before. Admiral Morrison received urgent messages from the Galactic Council demanding immediate explanations. The other species were no longer dismissing humanity as a minor civilization with primitive technology. Fear was beginning to replace mockery in their communications, and fear could be far more dangerous than contempt. Senator Bill Harper stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. The chamber was enormous, with delegates from hundreds of worlds arranged in a perfect circle around the central speaking platform. Each species had their own section designed to accommodate their unique physical needs and cultural preferences. The Zentari delegation sat in pools of blue liquid that kept their skin from drying out. The insect-like hive representatives hung from the ceiling in elaborate webs. The peaceful Corvani meditated in their traditional posture, while mechanical translators converted their thoughts into words. All of them were focused on the human senator, with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Senator Harper, you are here to explain recent actions by human military forces that have caused concern throughout the galaxy. The Defiance has demonstrated capabilities that appear to violate several interstellar treaties regarding weapons development. We demand a full accounting of this technology and its potential applications. The speaker was Counselor Vorth, a tall gray being, who had served as the Council's military advisor for over 2 centuries. His species had once been warriors, but evolved into diplomats after nearly destroying themselves in ancient wars. He viewed any new military technology as a threat to galactic stability. Harper looked around the chamber and chose his words carefully. Honorable delegates, the USS Defiance represents humanity's natural progression in space technology. We have not violated any treaties because our methods are fundamentally different from conventional approaches. We did not steal or copy alien designs, but created something entirely new using human innovation. Murmurs spread through the chamber as the translation systems converted his words into hundreds of different languages. Several delegates stood to voice objections, while others demanded more detailed explanations. The tension in the room was growing as fear and suspicion replaced diplomatic courtesy. Dr. Peter Collins was called to testify about the scientific principles behind human technology. The physicist appeared nervous as he walked to the center platform, but his voice was steady when he began to speak. The key to understanding human capabilities lies in how we approach problem solving. While other species reached technological plateaus thousands of years ago and stopped innovating, humans continue to push boundaries and find new solutions. He activated a holographic display showing the basic design principles of the Defiance. The ship's systems incorporate chaos theory, quantum uncertainty, and even artistic creativity into their operational matrices. Our AI learns and adapts in real time, rather than following pre-programmed responses. This allows us to handle situations that would confuse conventional technology. The alien delegates listened with growing alarm as Dr. Collins explained concepts that challenged everything they believed about proper engineering. Their civilizations had spent millennia perfecting standardized approaches to technology and warfare. The idea that someone would deliberately introduce uncertainty and creativity into military systems seemed insane to them. Counselor Vorth raised his hand for silence. Dr. Collins, are you saying that human warships operate using unpredictable and uncontrolled systems? How can you ensure they will not malfunction or turn against their creators? Collins smiled and shook his head. Honorable Counselor, our systems are not uncontrolled, but rather adaptively controlled. They learn from each situation and develop new responses as needed. This makes them more reliable than rigid programming, not less. A human ship can handle problems that would shut down an alien vessel because it thinks instead of just calculating. Back on the Defiance, Captain Blake was dealing with his own challenges. The ship was conducting routine patrols, but they were being followed by alien observation vessels from multiple governments. Everyone wanted to study the human ship in action, but Blake had orders to prevent any detailed scans of their technology. Commander Alex Chen approached the captain with a worried expression. The young pilot commanded the experimental fighter squadron that operated from the Defiance's hangar bay. His ships were even more advanced than the main vessel, incorporating lessons learned from every battle the humans had fought. Captain, we have a problem. 3 Corvani research ships have been tracking us for the past week. They are using passive sensors to map our hull configuration and engine signatures. If they continue this surveillance, they might figure out how our systems work. Blake nodded and considered his options. The Corvani were generally peaceful, but they shared information freely with other species. If they learned the secrets of human technology, every government in the galaxy would have access to that knowledge within months. Before Blake could respond, their sensors detected something unexpected. A massive ship was approaching from deep space, larger than anything in the galactic fleet databases. The vessel was ancient in design, with technology that predated even the oldest civilizations in the Council. Dr. Amy Sullivan studied the sensor readings with growing excitement and concern. Captain, this ship is using power sources we have never seen before. The energy signatures suggest technology that is thousands of years more advanced than anything in known space. The ancient vessel transmitted a message in a language that predated galactic standard, but the universal translators managed. A rough conversion. We are the hegemony. We have awakened to find our galaxy infested with primitive species, playing with forces beyond their understanding. You will submit to our authority or face extinction. Blake felt a chill run down his spine as he realized what they were facing. This was not another species that could be reasoned with or defeated using conventional tactics. The hegemony represented something far older and more dangerous than any threat humanity had encountered before. The alien observation ships that had been following the Defiance suddenly changed course and fled toward their homeworlds at maximum speed. News of the hegemony's return spread through galactic communication networks faster than light, causing panic on every civilized world. Emergency sessions were called in the Galactic Council as delegates tried to understand what was happening. Historical records mentioned the hegemony only in fragments and legends. They were an ancient empire that had ruled the galaxy before disappearing into the deep void thousands of years ago. Counselor Vorth addressed the emergency assembly with barely controlled fear in his voice. The historical records suggest that the hegemony possessed technology capable of destroying entire star systems. They ruled through absolute power and showed no mercy to species that opposed them. If they have truly returned, we face extinction. Senator Harper listened to the debates with growing understanding. The galaxy's established powers were terrified because they had grown weak and complacent over the millennia. Their rigid technologies and standardized tactics would be useless against an enemy that operated on a completely different level. But humans were different. They had built the Defiance using principles of adaptation and innovation that could potentially match even ancient technology. The question was whether one ship would be enough to face an empire that had once conquered the entire galaxy. Blake made his decision and opened a communication channel to Earth. Admiral Morrison, we need every available ship and every human innovation we can deploy. The galaxy is about to face its greatest threat, and we might be the only ones who can stop it. The hegemony fleet emerged from dark space like a nightmare made real. Hundreds of massive ships appeared near the galactic core, each one the size of a small moon and bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The ancient vessels moved in perfect formation as they began their inexorable advance toward the outer systems where younger civilizations had built their homes. General Mike Torres stood in the war room at Earth Defense Command, watching the tactical displays with grim determination. The reports coming in from across the galaxy painted a picture of absolute devastation. Entire star systems were going dark as the hegemony swept through them like a plague. The aliens had tried to organize a defense, but their fleets were being destroyed faster than they could deploy them. Zentari warships that had dominated space. Battles for centuries were reduced to scrap metal in minutes. The proud Hive Collective watched their massive dreadnoughts crumble under weapons that seemed to ignore shields and armor entirely. General Torres opened a communication channel to his fleet commanders spread across human space. The second wave of human warships had been completed just months before the hegemony arrived. 5 vessels built using the same principles as the Defiance, but incorporating everything they had learned from actual combat experience. Captain Rachel Davis commanded the USS Vengeance, a ship that pushed human engineering even further than its predecessor. Her vessel could adapt to enemy tactics in real time and modify its own weapon systems during battle. The other ships in the fleet were equally impressive demonstrations of human innovation and creativity. We are facing an enemy that conquered the galaxy once before using technology we do not understand. But they have been asleep for thousands of years while we have been learning and growing. Our advantages are speed, adaptability, and the ability to think outside conventional parameters. Use those advantages and make them count. The Galactic Council had made their position clear during the emergency sessions. They were offering humanity as a sacrifice to appease the ancient empire. Several alien governments had already transmitted surrender messages to the hegemony, along with detailed information about human space and military capabilities. Admiral Kate Morrison received the Council's ultimatum while the Defiance was racing back toward Earth at maximum speed. The message was delivered by Counselor Vorth himself, speaking with the authority of the entire galactic government. Humanity will surrender all military vessels to hegemony forces and submit to whatever terms the ancient empire chooses to impose. This is not a request, but a command from the supreme authority in this galaxy. Resistance will result in the immediate expulsion of Earth from all galactic institutions and the termination of all trade agreements. Morrison deleted the message, without bothering to respond. Earth had always been treated as a junior partner in galactic affairs, and now the other species were revealing their true nature. When faced with real danger, they chose to sacrifice others rather than stand and fight. The first contact between human and hegemony forces occurred near the colony world of New Boston. Commander Steve Johnson led a Special Forces unit aboard a modified freighter that was designed to look helpless while carrying enough firepower to destroy a battlecruiser. The hegemony ships approached the colony with the same arrogant confidence. They had shown everywhere else. Their commanders expected the primitive local forces to surrender immediately or be swept aside without effort. They had not encountered any meaningful resistance since awakening and saw no reason to expect any now. Johnson waited until the enemy vessels were committed to their attack run before revealing his ship's true nature. The freighters disguised. Hull panels opened to expose weapons that fired in ways the ancient technology could not predict or counter. The lead hegemony vessel suffered critical damage before its crew even realized they were under attack. The battle was brief but decisive. Human weapon systems adapted to enemy defensive measures faster than the ancient computers could process the information. Johnson's ship danced around the massive hegemony vessels like a fighter facing elephants, striking vital systems while avoiding their ponderous return fire. When the engagement ended, 3 hegemony ships were destroyed, and the colony was safe. But more importantly, Johnson had proven that the ancient empire was not invincible. Their technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also rigid and predictable. They had not faced adaptive opponents for so long that they had forgotten how to handle them. News of the victory spread through human space and gave hope to commanders who were preparing for what seemed like an impossible war. Captain Blake and the Defiance arrived at Earth just as the enemy's main fleet was detected approaching the solar system. The hegemony had committed over 200 ships to the assault on humanity's home world. The ancient commanders had studied the reports from New Boston and decided that overwhelming force was needed to crush these upstart primitives who dared to resist their authority. Blake looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet and felt his heart pounding. This would be the ultimate test of everything they had built and learned. The fate of humanity and possibly the entire galaxy depended on whether human innovation could triumph over ancient power. Dr. Amy Sullivan had spent every available hour upgrading the Defiance's weapon systems with new algorithms derived from studying hegemony technology. The enemy ships used energy fields that operated according to physical laws that human science barely understood, but she had found ways to disrupt them using controlled chaos patterns. Commander Lisa Parker coordinated with the other human ships to develop battle plans that incorporated maximum unpredictability. Where the enemy expected coordinated fleet actions, they would face individual ships operating according to their own tactical assessments. No 2 human vessels would fight the same way. Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez had pushed every human ship beyond its original specifications. The vessels that would face the hegemony were no longer just warships but works of art that combined advanced technology with pure creative expression. They moved through space like living things guided by human intuition as much as computer calculations. Captain Rachel Davis and the USS Vengeance took position beside the Defiance as the combined human fleet prepared for battle. 6 ships against 200 seemed like hopeless odds, but the humans had advantages that could not be measured in simple numbers. The Archon himself commanded the hegemony fleet from his flagship, a vessel that dwarfed even the largest human cities. He had ruled the galaxy for millennia before choosing to sleep until lesser species proved themselves worthy of his attention. Now he would demonstrate why his empire had been supreme. Blake opened communication channels to all human vessels as the enemy fleet entered the solar system. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for the right of creativity and innovation to exist in this galaxy. Show them what humans can do when we refuse to accept limitations. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the outcome would determine whether the galaxy belonged to ancient tyranny or new possibilities. The Battle of Earth began at 800 hours, when the hegemony fleet entered firing range of the human defensive positions. The Archon had arranged his ships in a massive sphere formation designed to surround and crush any opposition through sheer, overwhelming firepower. 200 ancient vessels moved with mechanical precision toward their targets. Captain Blake watched the enemy approach from the bridge of the Defiance, while his crew made final preparations for combat. The human fleet consisted of only 6 ships, but each one represented the absolute pinnacle of human engineering and creativity. They would either prove that innovation could triumph over raw power or die in the attempt. The first shots came from the hegemony flagship as massive energy beams lanced out toward Earth's orbital defenses. The ancient weapons were designed to destroy entire fleets with single volleys, and they tore through the outer defensive platforms like tissue paper. Debris rained down through Earth's atmosphere as the planet's first line of defense crumbled. But the human ships were not where the enemy expected them to be. Instead of forming a traditional battle line, they had scattered throughout the solar system using unpredictable movement patterns that confused the hegemony targeting systems. The ancient computers tried to calculate intercept courses, but kept getting error messages. Captain Rachel Davis and the USS Vengeance struck first, appearing behind the enemy formation like a ghost materializing from empty space. Her ship's weapons fired in spiraling patterns that curved around the hegemony shields and struck vulnerable points that should have been impossible to target. 3 enemy vessels exploded before they could react. The Archon roared in fury as he watched his perfect formation dissolve into chaos. His ships tried to turn and engage the human vessels, but they seemed to be everywhere at once. The USS Defiance danced between the massive enemy hulls like a fighter among giants, its weapons striking with surgical precision. Commander Alex Chen led his fighter squadron in an attack run against the hegemony command ship. The small human craft moved in ways that violated every principle of spaceflight, twisting and spinning through defensive fire that should have destroyed them instantly. Their weapons were tiny compared to the ancient ship's armor, but they struck at exactly the right points to cause maximum damage. Dr. Amy Sullivan had programmed the human weapons to exploit weaknesses in hegemony technology that the enemy had forgotten existed. The ancient ships were incredibly powerful, but they had been built so long ago that their designers had never considered certain types of attacks. Human creativity found gaps that should not have been there. The battle raged across the entire solar system as human ships used planets and asteroids as cover while striking at enemy vessels from impossible angles. Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez pushed the Defiance beyond every safety limit as the ship performed maneuvers that should have torn it apart. The human engineering philosophy of adaptive design allowed their vessels to exceed their original specifications when needed most. Commander Steve Johnson led a Special Forces boarding party against one of the smaller hegemony vessels. His team used captured alien technology that had been reverse-engineered with human innovation to create weapons and equipment that the enemy could not defend against. They fought their way to the ship's control center and discovered something that changed everything. The ancient computers were incredibly advanced, but they operated according to rigid programming that had not been updated for thousands of years. The hegemony had become so dependent on their technology that they had forgotten how to adapt when it failed. They were prisoners of their own perfection. Johnson transmitted his findings to the human fleet commanders as his team planted explosives throughout the enemy ship. The weakness was not in their technology, but in their thinking. The hegemony could not innovate or improvise because they had programmed themselves to follow ancient patterns without deviation. Blake received the intelligence and immediately understood its implications. He opened communication channels to all human vessels and transmitted new tactical instructions based on Johnson's discovery. The key was to force the enemy into situations their programming could not handle. The tide of battle began to turn as human ships started using tactics that made no sense according to conventional military doctrine. They flew directly into enemy weapons fire while performing evasive maneuvers that should have been impossible. They used gravitational fields as weapons and turned asteroids into guided missiles. The USS Vengeance rammed directly through the center of the enemy formation. While firing in all directions at once, Captain Davis had realized that the hegemony ships were programmed to avoid collisions and would scatter if faced with a suicidal attack. Her ship suffered heavy damage, but caused the entire enemy fleet to break formation. The Archon watched his perfect strategy collapse as his ships tried to respond to human tactics that violated every rule of warfare. His computers kept demanding new instructions for situations that had never been programmed. The ancient empire that had conquered the galaxy through superior technology was being defeated by opponents who refused to follow the rules. The climactic moment came when the Defiance engaged the hegemony flagship in single combat. The massive ancient vessel was armed with weapons that could destroy planets, but Blake had discovered that its size was also its weakness. The ship was so large that its own weapons could not target anything close to its hull. Blake ordered Danny Rodriguez to take the ship directly against the enemy flagship at maximum speed. The Defiance crashed through the ancient vessel's shields and buried itself deep in the hull structure like a parasite. From that position, Dr. Sullivan's weapon systems could strike at the ship's power core while the enemy's massive guns could not return fire. The hegemony flagship began to break apart as internal explosions tore through its ancient hull. Archon transmitted one final message as his empire died around him. You have doomed the galaxy to chaos and disorder. Without our guidance, the younger species will destroy themselves through endless warfare. Blake responded as the Defiance extracted itself from the wreckage of the enemy ship. We prefer chaos to tyranny and disorder to slavery. The galaxy belongs to all species, not just the oldest and strongest. The remaining hegemony ships began to retreat toward dark space as their command structure collapsed. The ancient empire that had ruled through fear and superior technology had been broken by opponents who fought with creativity and determination. Humanity had proven that innovation could triumph over even the most advanced tyranny. But victory came with a price. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light, and the reaction was not what the humans had expected. Instead of gratitude for saving them from the hegemony, many alien species were terrified by the demonstration of human capabilities. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions to discuss what they now called the human threat. If humanity could defeat the hegemony, what was to stop them from conquering everyone else? The very adaptability and creativity that had saved the galaxy now seemed like the greatest danger to galactic stability. The victory celebration on Earth lasted only 3 days before the political consequences began to unfold. President Linda Martinez stood in her office overlooking the reconstruction efforts where orbital defense platforms were being rebuilt with improved human technology. The debris from the battle still glowed in Earth's upper atmosphere, a constant reminder of how close humanity had come to extinction. Ambassador Tom Bradley entered the office carrying encrypted messages from across the galaxy. His expression was grim as he placed the datapad on the president's desk. The contents would change everything about humanity's relationship with galactic civilization. Madam President, the Galactic Council has issued an ultimatum. They demand that all human warships be surrendered immediately and that our military technology be shared with Council oversight committees. They claim our vessels represent an unacceptable threat to galactic stability and must be controlled by proper authorities. Martinez read through the messages with growing anger. The same alien governments that had cowered before the hegemony and offered humanity as a sacrifice were now trying to claim authority over human achievements. The species that had been saved by human sacrifice and innovation were demanding submission from their saviors. The economic sanctions had already begun. Trade routes that connected human colonies to galactic markets were being closed by council decree. Alien corporations were canceling contracts and withdrawing investments from human space. The message was clear: submit or face complete isolation from galactic civilization. Dr. Peter Collins had been working around the clock to analyze captured hegemony technology when the crisis began. His team had discovered that the ancient empire's greatest weakness was also humanity's greatest strength. The ability to adapt and innovate in real time was something that rigid civilizations could never truly understand or counter. Collins received a call from President Martinez asking him to attend an emergency meeting with the cabinet. The physicist looked exhausted as he entered the situation room where Earth's leadership was grappling with an impossible decision. Submit to alien control or face the consequences of standing alone against the galaxy. Peter, we need to understand our options. Can we defend ourselves if the entire galaxy turns against us? Are our ships capable of facing a coalition of every species in the Council? Collins considered the question carefully before responding. Madam President, our technology gives us significant advantages, but we are vastly outnumbered. The Council can field thousands of ships if they unite against us. However, their rigid tactical doctrines and inability to adapt would work in our favor during any extended conflict. Meanwhile, Captain Blake and the crew of the Defiance were dealing with more immediate problems. The ship had suffered significant damage during the battle with the hegemony, and repairs were complicated by the fact that their technology was unlike anything in standard galactic databases. Human engineering required human solutions. Commander Lisa Parker coordinated with Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez to develop new repair techniques using salvaged hegemony materials. The ancient technology could be adapted to human purposes, but only by throwing out conventional approaches and improvising new methods. It was exactly the kind of creative problem-solving that made human ships so effective. Dr. Amy Sullivan had been studying the weapons systems of destroyed hegemony vessels and made a disturbing discovery. The ancient empire had not been the original builders of their technology. Evidence suggested they had conquered an even older civilization and stolen their achievements, then spent millennia stagnating while claiming credit for innovation they had never possessed. Captain Blake found this information both fascinating and troubling. If the hegemony had risen to power by stealing technology from others, it suggested a pattern that might repeat itself. The current galactic powers might be planning to do the same thing to humanity. The first test of the new galactic order came when a joint council fleet arrived at the border of human space. Admiral Kethamore commanded a force of over 100 ships representing 24 different species. His orders were to escort human vessels to designated surrender points, where they would be dismantled and studied. Admiral Kate Morrison met the alien fleet with a small human patrol group led by the USS Vengeance. Captain Rachel Davis had volunteered for the dangerous assignment, knowing that any hostile action could trigger a galaxy-wide war. The tension was so thick it could be cut with a knife as the two fleets faced each other across empty space. Admiral Kethamore transmitted his demands with the authority of the entire Galactic Council behind him. Human vessels will power down their weapons and submit to Council inspection teams. Any resistance will be considered an act of war against the legitimate government of this galaxy. Captain Davis responded with calm professionalism, despite the fury burning in her heart. Admiral, we are operating in human space under the authority of the Earth government. Your ships have no jurisdiction here, and we will not submit to illegal searches or seizures. The standoff lasted for 6 hours as both sides waited for someone to make the first move. The alien ships had overwhelming numerical superiority, but they had all seen the battle recordings from the HFY War. Human vessels had proven capable of defeating odds that should have been impossible. The situation changed when unexpected reinforcements arrived. Kaladin led a small fleet of ships from various species that had fought alongside humans during the hegemony crisis. The alien warriors had seen humanity's true nature during the darkest hours of the war and refused to stand by while their allies were threatened. Kaladin opened a communication channel to both fleets as his ships took position between the human and council forces. I speak for those who fought beside humans when the galaxy faced extinction. These people saved us all when our own governments abandoned us to the hegemony. We will not allow them to be punished for their courage and sacrifice. Admiral Kethmore found himself facing a complex political situation that his orders had not anticipated. Several of the species in his own fleet had representatives among Kaladin's group. A battle here would split the council and potentially trigger civil war among the alien powers. The crisis was resolved when President Martinez transmitted a formal response to the Galactic Council. Earth would not surrender its ships or submit to alien oversight, but they were willing to negotiate agreements that respected the sovereignty of all parties. Humanity wanted peace, but would not accept subjugation as the price. The alien fleet withdrew to consider this response while human ships continued their patrols with increased vigilance. The immediate threat had passed, but everyone understood that the larger conflict was just beginning. The galaxy was being forced to choose between cooperation and control. Captain Blake received new orders to patrol the outer regions where human colonies were reporting increased pirate activity. The criminals were taking advantage of the political chaos to raid shipping and attack isolated settlements. It seemed that defeating the hegemony had created as many problems as it solved. The Defiance departed Earth with a sense of unfinished business hanging over the crew. They had saved the galaxy from ancient tyranny, only to face new threats from the very people they had protected. The war for humanity's future was entering a new phase that would test everything they had learned about survival and adaptation. Judge Kethmore entered the Grand Tribunal chamber with the weight of galactic history pressing down on his shoulders. The ancient hall had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the formation of alliances that lasted millennia, and the judgment of species that had threatened the cosmic order. Today, it would decide the fate of humanity and their revolutionary warships. Captain John Blake sat in the defendant's chair facing a semicircle of judges representing every major civilization in the galaxy. The charges against him were unprecedented. In galactic law, crimes against cosmic peace through the development of inherently destabilizing military technology. The trial would determine whether human innovation was a gift to the galaxy or a threat that must be contained. The prosecution was led by Counselor Vorth, whose opening statement painted humanity as dangerous revolutionaries whose unpredictable technology threatened the stability that had maintained peace for thousands of years. He displayed holographic evidence of human ships defeating overwhelming odds through tactics that violated established military doctrine. Honorable judges, we face a species that refuses to follow the rules that have governed civilized warfare for millennia. Their ships adapt and learn in ways that make conventional defense impossible. If allowed to continue unchecked, human technology will render all existing military forces obsolete and plunge the galaxy into an arms race that could destroy everything we have built. Blake listened to the accusations with a mixture of anger and sadness. The same qualities that had saved the galaxy from the hegemony were now being portrayed as crimes against civilization. Human creativity and adaptability were seen as threats rather than gifts. When called to testify, Blake spoke with quiet dignity about the principles that guided human military development. We built our ships to protect and defend, not to conquer or dominate. Every innovation came from necessity as we faced threats that conventional technology could not handle. The defiance exists because someone had to stand against forces that the established powers could not resist. Dr. Amy Sullivan testified about the scientific principles behind human weapon systems. She explained how chaos theory and quantum mechanics were incorporated into targeting algorithms, not to create unpredictable destruction, but to provide precise solutions to complex tactical problems. Human weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy whenever possible. The defense team presented evidence that human ships had saved millions of lives during the Hegemony War, while conventional alien fleets were being swept aside like debris. They showed recordings of human vessels protecting civilian populations and evacuating refugees, while their own governments abandoned them to save themselves. Commander Alex Chen described how human fighter pilots had developed new combat techniques through pure instinct and creativity. His squadron had defeated ancient hegemony interceptors, not through superior technology, but through the ability to think and react in ways that could not be programmed or predicted. The most compelling testimony came from Kaladin and other alien warriors who had fought alongside human forces. They spoke of watching human crews push their ships beyond design limits to save alien civilians they had never met. They described seeing innovation born from desperation and courage that transcended species boundaries. Kaladin faced the tribunal with the bearing of a veteran warrior as he delivered his statement. "I have fought beside humans in the darkest hours our galaxy has known. I have seen them sacrifice themselves for people who called them primitive and crude. Their ships are not weapons of conquest, but tools of protection wielded by those brave enough to stand when others fall." The prosecution countered with expert analysis, showing how human technology could be used for aggressive purposes. Military. Theorists demonstrated tactical scenarios where adaptive human ships could defeat entire fleets through surprise attacks and unconventional strategies. They argued that the potential for abuse made the technology too dangerous to allow. President Linda Martinez testified via secure transmission from Earth, explaining humanity's position in clear terms. "We did not seek to become a military power, but circumstances forced us to develop capabilities that could protect our people and our allies. We have never used our technology for conquest or intimidation, but only for defense and peacekeeping." The trial continued for weeks as expert witnesses debated the philosophical implications of human innovation. Some argued that technological advancement was natural and beneficial, while others claimed that certain developments were inherently destabilizing to galactic civilization. Dr. Peter Collins presented the scientific case for human technology, explaining how their adaptive systems could benefit all species if shared properly. He proposed international oversight committees that could monitor human military development while allowing continued innovation for peaceful purposes. The turning point came when classified evidence was presented showing that several alien governments had been secretly trying to reverse engineer human technology for their own military programs. The prosecution's claims about human aggression seemed hypocritical when their own people were attempting to steal the very capabilities they claimed were too dangerous. Judge Kethmore called for a recess to allow the tribunal to deliberate on the evidence presented. The chamber emptied as delegates returned to their embassies to consult with their home governments about the implications of the trial's outcome. Captain Blake remained in his chair looking out through the massive windows. At the galactic capital below, millions of beings from hundreds of worlds lived and worked together in apparent harmony. But he now understood how fragile that peace really was. Fear and suspicion lay just beneath the surface of civilized discourse. Commander Lisa Parker approached, the captain with the latest reports from human space. Admiral Morrison had ordered all human ships to maintain defensive positions while avoiding any actions that could be construed as aggressive. The fleet was ready for war, but hoping for peace. When The tribunal reconvened. Judge Kethmore delivered the verdict that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. The court finds that while human military technology represents a significant advancement in destructive capability, the evidence does not support charges of intentional destabilization or aggressive intent. However, the court also recognizes the legitimate concerns of member species regarding the proliferation of adaptive weapons systems. Therefore, we order the following compromise. Human warships shall be restricted from operating in designated galactic core regions except under specific circumstances involving threats to civilian populations. Blake felt his heart sink as the AI judge continued. The USS Defiance and other human warships are hereby banned from routine operations in Council space. They may only enter these regions when invited by legitimate governments facing existential threats that conventional forces cannot handle. The verdict was a hollow victory that satisfied no one. Humanity kept their ships but was effectively exiled from the broader galactic community. The technology that had saved the galaxy from the hegemony was now considered too dangerous for civilized space. As the tribunal session ended, Blake understood that everything had changed. The Defiance would continue to patrol the outer rim where desperate people faced threats that the established powers could not or would not address. They had become guardians of the forgotten and protectors of the lost. 5 years after the tribunal verdict, Captain John Blake stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching another alien convoy flee at their approach. The merchant ships had been trading peacefully in the outer rim when human sensors detected them, but old fears died hard in galactic society. To most species, the sight of a human warship still meant unpredictable danger and uncontrollable power. The ban had transformed the Defiance from a military vessel into something closer to a legend. Stories spread through the galaxy about the human ship that appeared wherever the impossible was needed. Pirates spoke in whispers about the vessel that could bend space itself to hunt them down. Colonial administrators sent desperate messages, hoping the humans would answer their calls for help. Commander Lisa Parker approached with the day's mission briefings. "Captain, we have received 17 requests for assistance in the past week. 3 colony worlds are under siege by raiders. 2 systems are dealing with plague outbreaks that require medical supplies, and multiple shipping lanes are reporting increased pirate activity." Blake studied the reports with familiar resignation. The Galactic Council maintained peace and order in their core territories, but the Outer Rim had been essentially abandoned to its fate. Human ships had become the unofficial guardians of forgotten worlds and desperate people who had nowhere else to turn. Dr. Amy Sullivan had spent the years since the trial developing new applications for human technology that focused on peaceful purposes. Her research team had created medical scanners that could adapt to unknown diseases and environmental processors that could terraform dead worlds using innovative techniques, but the galaxy only remembered the weapons. Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez entered the bridge with his latest status report. The ship's systems had been continuously upgraded and improved over the past 5 years, incorporating lessons learned from every mission they completed. The Defiance was no longer just a warship, but a symbol of human persistence and ingenuity. "Captain, the engines are running at 110% efficiency. I have managed to improve the power distribution systems using principles we learned from that plasma storm rescue last month. The ship keeps getting better even though the galaxy keeps getting worse." The latest crisis had brought them to the Kepler system, where a mining colony was under attack by unknown raiders using advanced technology. The local defense forces had been destroyed, and the colonial government was preparing to evacuate when they detected the Defiance approaching at impossible speeds. Blake opened communication channels to the colonial administrators as his ship took position between the raiders and their targets. "This is Captain Blake of the USS Defiance. You are attacking a civilian population under our protection. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The raider response came in the form of weapons fire directed at the human ship. Blake smiled. grimly as he recognized the energy signatures of the attacking vessels. These were not ordinary pirates, but ships using modified hegemony technology salvaged from the ancient battlefields. Dr. Sullivan confirmed his suspicions as her sensors analyzed the enemy weapons. Captain, these raiders have somehow acquired and adapted hegemony energy systems. Their ships are more advanced than anything the Council fleets could field. This explains how they have been able to defeat conventional defenses so easily. The battle that followed demonstrated everything the galaxy feared about human warships. The Defiance moved through space like a living thing, adapting to enemy tactics, faster than the raiders could adjust their strategies. Human weapons curved around their shields and struck from angles that should have been impossible. Commander Alex Chen led his fighter squadron in coordinated attacks that confused the enemy targeting systems. The small human craft moved in patterns that incorporated elements of dance and music along with military precision. They were works of art as much as weapons of war. But the most impressive aspect of the engagement was how the human crew minimized casualties even while achieving total victory. The raiders were disabled rather than destroyed whenever possible, and Blake's team made efforts to rescue enemy survivors despite their hostile actions. When the battle ended, the raider fleet was scattered and broken, while the colony remained unharmed. The grateful colonists transmitted messages of thanks that Blake accepted with quiet dignity. This was why the Defiance existed, not for conquest or glory, but to protect those who could not protect themselves. News of the victory spread through the Outer Rim and beyond, reaching even the galactic core where Council members read the reports with mixed emotions. The humans continued to demonstrate capabilities that made conventional military doctrine obsolete, but they used their power only for defensive purposes. President Linda Martinez received an unexpected visitor at her office on Earth. Ambassador Tom Bradley escorted Counselor Vorth, the same alien official who had prosecuted Blake at the tribunal years earlier. The counselor looked older and more tired than she remembered. Madam President, may I come with an unofficial request from certain members of the Galactic Council. We have been monitoring human activities in the Outer Rim and recognize the valuable services your ships provide. There are threats emerging that our conventional forces cannot handle effectively. Martinez listened with interest as Vorth explained the situation. Ancient technology caches were being discovered throughout the galaxy, some containing weapons and devices that predated even the hegemony. Criminal organizations and rogue governments were acquiring these artifacts and using them for purposes that threatened galactic stability. The Council's rigid military doctrines and standardized technologies were proving inadequate against enemies using chaotic and unpredictable ancient systems. Only human ships with their adaptive capabilities seemed capable of countering these new threats effectively. Vorth made his request with obvious reluctance. We need human assistance, but cannot officially acknowledge this need without undermining the tribunal verdict. Would Earth be willing to provide covert support for Council operations against these emerging threats? Martinez considered the proposal carefully. Humanity had been excluded from galactic society but remained committed to protecting innocent lives wherever they were threatened. If the Council was finally ready to acknowledge the value of human capabilities, perhaps cooperation was possible. President agreed to limited collaboration under strict conditions. Human ships would operate independently while coordinating with Council forces when necessary. There would be no formal alliance, but there could be mutual assistance when facing common enemies. Captain Blake received his new orders while the Defiance was completing repairs at a hidden human facility in the asteroid belt. The ship would continue its guardian role in the Outer Rim, but would also respond to specific threats in Council space when invited by legitimate authorities. As the Defiance departed for its next mission, Blake reflected on how much had changed since their first battle against the pirates years ago. The galaxy still feared human technology and the unpredictable power it represented, but they had also learned to rely on it when facing threats that conventional forces could not handle. The ban remained in effect, and human ships were still forbidden from routine operations in civilized space. But everyone understood that when the impossible was needed, when hope seemed lost and conventional wisdom failed, there was always the possibility that a human ship would appear on the horizon. The USS Defiance had become more than a warship. It was a symbol of humanity's refusal to accept limitations and their commitment to protecting others regardless of the cost. The galaxy might never fully accept human technology, but they could no longer imagine a universe without it. Blake looked out at the stars ahead and smiled. The ban had been intended to limit human influence, but had instead made them indispensable. Every crisis they resolved and every impossible victory they achieved proved that innovation and adaptability were more powerful than fear and rigid thinking. The most overpowered human warship continued its eternal patrol, banned from galactic society but essential to its survival.